Hi, this is Ashley, and I am here today to give you my thoughts on An Ember in the Ashes by Sabat Tahir. So, An Ember in the Ashes by Sabat Tahir is a fantasy, and initially I thought that this was supposed to be a standalone fantasy. Everywhere will pretty much say that it's a standalone, but there's no way that this is a standalone. If this is a standalone, it left way too many things way too open. But that said, I still really did enjoy the book. There were a lot of interesting characters and a lot of interesting things going on in the story that made me really love this book. So I'm going to keep this completely spoiler free because some people don't like to get spoiled. So I'm just going to let you know what I thought about the book. And Ember in the Ashes is a dual POV story. So you have two completely separate POVs that are taking place in this same city. And so your first POV that you're with is Leia. Leia. I've mentioned this. I cannot pronounce her name. For the rest of the video, I'm just going to call her Leia. Leia is the daughter of former members of the resistance. Her parents were killed and now she lives with her grandparents and her brother. And her brother is this sweet guy, but all of a sudden the police come in looking for her brother Darren, and they storm the house and they force him out, and her brother's just like, hide this book for me. So she hides it, and then the police and the masks are actually these people who serve as essentially like the military forces, and they attack. The masks run into Leia's home. They kill her grandparents and they haul her brother off to jail, but Leia is able to escape just in time and she goes to the resistance. And I'm not going to say anything more. That's just what happens in her first chapter, so I'm not really spoiling anything. She runs, she goes to the resistance, and pretty much her story picks up from there. She is there and she's trying to essentially get her brother back from being arrested. And that is ultimately her storyline. The other POV is Elias, who is a mask himself. And the masks, I didn't really go into it much before, but they are these military force and they wear silver masks over their faces. And these masks don't just go on their faces. They actually meld into their faces and attach to their skin. Except for Elias, who doesn't really want to be a mask. He takes off his mask every night, so it hasn't bonded with his face, and the others give him hell for it. Elias is actually trying to find a way out. So he is, in the very beginning, literally trying to escape and set up his escape path so that once he graduates and becomes a full-fledged mask, he can actually run away and essentially try to escape the life that he was going to be forced into. His journey actually focuses on these trials that start to happen because he is visited and is told that he can either run away or he can try to fight for real true freedom. And so he ends up staying and fighting through these trials. Through these two POVs, you have these two very different stories and they start intertwining and weaving together until they're finally intermeshed at the end. They're all in the same city and you can see the links between them in each different chapter. And it's really interesting and I really enjoyed it. I definitely did enjoy the Elias POV a lot more than I did Leia's. I think I just liked his story a little bit more, but it was definitely Leia's story that is carrying this entire series because with her story you get all of the underlying factors that build into it. But I definitely did like Elias's a little bit more. And like I said, I'm not going to go into spoilers, so I'm not going to say too much more about the book. But I will say that I really did enjoy the characters that were in the book. You got a whole bunch of different ones. Some were more fleshed out than others. There was this character named Spiro Telemann who actually mentored Leia's brother Darren. He also made the blades that Elias used during his trial, so he was tied to them, and he is also not a big fan of the current regime that is leading the empire. And he was just a really interesting character. We didn't get a whole lot with him, but what we did I found was really interesting, and I hope that we will see more of him in the future. Keenan was essentially Leia's love interest. He's this redheaded, freckled kid, but he's really dark and gloomy and broody, and he doesn't give off the greatest impression to Leia initially, but slowly he starts to grow on her, and they start to have this vibe between each other. And then there is Helene, who is essentially the girl that Elias is in love with, and Helene loves him, but they're warriors, they're soldiers, and the fact that Helene is even around and one of the best that there is a problem. There is Karis Viturius, who is Elias's mother, and she is the worst person ever. She's vile. But yeah, I just really enjoyed the characters. They were really interesting. The relationships that formed throughout the book were interesting. Like I said, Elias's storyline was more appealing to me than Leia's, but they were both interesting. And I just really, really enjoyed the book. I ended up giving it a 4 out of 5 stars, and I would recommend it to people that really like fantasy. Those are all my thoughts on An Ember in the Ashes, and I will see you guys next time. Bye. Like I said, this is not a standalone. It is marketed as a standalone, but if you go into it thinking that you're going to get some sort of wrapped up conclusion, or even most of the threads closed up, you're not going to get it.